Okay, we are back in the studio today.
Back in the
Blake,
studio.
good to see you again.
Man, it's good to be here.
And you brought a guest with us today, Thad. Nice to meet you
Nice
this
to meet
morning.
you too.
I guess my first question right out of the gate, we do have a lot of guests that Blake brings on, but how do you know Blake? And I see you wearing the ARC Realty shirt, but what's your involvement with ARC and what do you do?
Well, Blake and I work together at our ARC office in Hoover, and I am the managing broker there. So basically, I try to help the agents do what they do better, try to give them platforms to do their business in an easier, more efficient way, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Try to keep them out of trouble if things, sometimes things get sideways in this business, and not by anybody's fault, but sometimes just the circumstances get people sideways, and I try to straighten those out or at least help.
Is there an example you could give of something that goes sideways that maybe that would involve your...
How much time do you have?
Yeah, every day. I think the biggest thing that we see go sideways is when one party wants to get out of a contract. We have, two parties have a seller and a buyer, and at some point something causes one of them to decide, I want out of this. Typically it's the buyer. The buyer says, I no longer want to buy the house because of X, and somebody wants to keep the earnest money every single time, even if it's a legitimate reason to get out of the contract. Sometimes the seller wants to keep it, but that's our biggest issue.
I know that when I purchased a home, it was a pretty quick process. Unfortunately, I didn't know Blake at the time, otherwise I would have absolutely used Blake. But you said earnest money, so that's usually when, explain to that, what is that and why has that become a contentious thing sometimes?
So basically, earnest money is when you have a purchaser, when they make an offer on a property, they put down some money that says, hey,
I am serious.
Yeah,
I want to keep this.
Here's some money. We're for sure going to buy the house. So, take this as us saying, yes, we're serious. We want to go forward. We want to go to the next step. And that's basically
It's basically like putting up collateral.
Yeah,
it's like,
sure.
hey, it's
That's
not
good.
extra. It's going to go towards their down payment, but it's saying, hey, I'm serious. Usually we'll see around like 1% of the purchase price, but in the crazy market we've seen in the past couple of years, people might put down big numbers.
Dude, that's huge
cash.
Numbers. Yeah, so I can understand if you get out of the contract.
Yeah. To an extent, it can be kind of a false security to a seller because you've got contingencies in the contract that legally allow the buyer to get that back if financing falls through or if inspection goes bad. But a lot of the fires and stuff that has to put out is both parties, buyer and seller, have to sign to agree to return that to the buyer. Even if the contract just is very, very clear, they're getting out of the contract for this because of inspection, they're in their timelines, it's got to go back to the buyer. If that seller just wants to be a jerk and be like, no, I'm not going to do it, I'm not signing that, it can go to court, right?
Yeah, it can. And I think what we're seeing now with the way this market is and how, fast things work, and when you have a really good house and you have 15 offers on the house or something like that, and somebody comes in and says, I'm going to put $25,000 earnest money down, and 5 days later they decide, oh, I don't like the inspection, I'm going to walk. Well, there's been 14 other contracts that walked away, and typically what the seller is real unhappy about that because he could have taken the next contract, which could have been almost just as good, and the seller's lost a ton of momentum. And
Sure.
that's where the contention comes from the seller. Even if the buyer had the right to do it, it does impact the seller in a negative way by losing that momentum and having to go back to some of the other offers and say, this didn't work, so will you come back, please? So it puts the seller in a not as strong as in a position to sell.
Yeah, but at the same time, the seller can't sell. Well, Thad, this is where I need. He's my question answer. So if a seller, in that 15 offer scenario, if the first buyer backs out and the seller says, no, I'm not going to give up your earnest money, and they're battling where it goes, that seller can't sell that house until they get that resolved.
For the most part, no. But there are times that yes, they can still sell, and because the contract could be null and void, but you can still battle over who gets the earnest money. So it really just depends on how things were set up and what the reasons were and what the seller and buyer are arguing. Did you really have a contract? That's a lot of times we really don't have a contract. They've given us earnest money, but we didn't complete what the contract said to complete. So we really didn't have it in the first place. So most of the time, no, the seller shouldn't sell the house until that's resolved.
Yeah. Which, so a lot of times it's just better for the whole situation for the sellers to say, all right, short term, let's just let this go, give it back to them so we can move on to the next offer and get this chapter over with. So.
But I guess the take-home point, there is a pre-contract, I guess, to the full-blown contract that you bought that you would sign in the purchase agreement, just for earnest money.
It's part of the original.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's part of the original.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So sign the paperwork, I guess, is what I'm hearing.
Well,
Don't
and the
just
biggest
get
thing
an
is,
instrument.
make sure you've got someone buyer and seller side advising you who knows what they're doing, and that's where having a good agent comes in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, how long have you been part of ARC, and kind of how did you get into this?
That's a long story.
I don't know how far back we want to go.
I'm an old guy.
Well, so this past week, we talk about systems and structure a lot on this podcast, and so Thad is always, he embodies that with his business and how he runs ARC and our brokerage and our office, and so he's up there every morning early, and we're usually the first two in there for the hour and a half in the office. And so last week we were talking about some stuff on my team and just about the foundation and fundamentals of getting started in real estate. And then he started talking about his story and all the stuff he did to really build a business. How many years ago? I mean, I'll let you, I'll divert to you. And
Well, we're a little over.
Did you
25
start
years
ARC
ago.
Realty?
No,
You're not the guy?
absolutely not.
Okay. I was about to say, am I sitting here with the CEO? All right.
Tommy Brigham was the founder there, and I've been with ARC now, I think, for 7-8 years, somewhere
Yeah.
around in there. I've been in business for a little over 25 years.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. I don't want to go any further than that. But it's funny because we had one of our top producers speak to our office on Friday, and she did almost $60 million worth of business last year.
which is crazy.
It's-
It's more than a lot of offices.
Yeah, and
Wow.
it's funny though, the things that she does, the bottom line daily activities that she does are no different than what I did 25 years ago. They're really just the same. And
So you're planning to do $60 million next year?
No.
Next quarter.
well, I would love that, but really, it all boils down to being in front of people and doing the right thing. How many people can you be in front of and tell them what you do for a living, and then when you get that opportunity to work for somebody, do a good job. It's simple. And that's what Blake and I were talking about. What did I do when I first got started? And I mean, it goes back to making phone call after phone call, knocking on doors, calling for sale by owners, calling expired listings, just putting myself out in front of as many people that I think that might want to buy or sell as I could possibly. And that's what we were talking about, how people, they're looking for, the next internet lead. They're looking for the next silver bullet, the next, contact management system, the next whatever, where it's really just simple. How many people did you talk to today? How many people did you let know that, hey, I help people buy and sell real estate? That's basically what it is. We're kind of advertising machines is what we should be. And
Sounds like it, yeah.
well, and we get so caught up in the next shiny technological technology thing. Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, all those are cool, and they're great instruments for doing what? For getting your name in front of people and letting them know, here's what I do for a living. So it's just not as complicated as people want to make it.
Yeah, it's and I think people, like a lot of people getting into the business, right? It's kind of a hot topic. It's the barriers to entry to get into being a realtor are pretty low from a cost and time standpoint, both. And I think that's changing. That's a different topic. So when you're looking at it, and someone's a brand new agent, they come in and say, okay, what do I do? For me, like I started out with $0, so going and spending $6,000 to $8,000 a month on leads on Zillow wasn't an option for me. And so it was, what are the activities I can do? And this is the same thing for Thad, is like, what can I do that costs me time, which I had a ton of when I started because I didn't have any business, but didn't cost me any money, or cost me very little money because I didn't have any of that. And it's exactly what he just said. Like, you can pick up at your time. I think he said you picked up the phone book and just started at the top and just would call for how many hours a day, and that's all free things to do, but it's hard things to do. And so people aren't just willing to put that work in. They want to buy, they want to throw money at a system that's like the new thing that is kind of looked at as, hey, this is a way to not have to do those things. And it's, while they can work, they're just, I don't think, as effective to build a long-term business.
Sure.
So.
Just sounds like, they just want to put their name in a database or something like that, and just have
Yeah.
the clients reach out to them versus the other way around,
Yeah.
actually going and hunting for
Yeah.
those clients.
Looking for something like a replacement for the
Yeah.
picking up the phone. Right.
You got to do the work. And I mean,
Yeah.
when I got in business, it's kind of how Blake and I are very similar. When I got in business, I was in my 20s, and I had no money, so I didn't have and I had to sell. I mean, I had to put food on the table. So the easiest thing for me to do, and it was free, was pick up the phone and make phone calls. And basically, you made phone calls until you got an appointment. And, you may get an appointment on your first call. You may get an appointment on your 50th call. Every day I came into the office and I made phone calls until I got an appointment. And people, it's weird, especially nowadays, people say, well, you were calling strangers. There's different. But, yeah, I was calling strangers because I was 25 years old. And I didn't know, most of my friends weren't buying houses yet. So I had to find somebody that was going to sell a house.
Yeah.
Literally surfing through the yellow pages, just going alphabetically.
Well, basically back then we had this thing that's called a crisscross directory. Nobody had cell phones.
Okay.
I'm really dating myself now. Nobody had cell phones. Everybody had a home phone. So there was a directory that had listed every street in Jefferson, and on that street it listed the owner of the house, their name, and it also had their home phone number. So what I would do is I would go street by street, and I would start, basically do streets in Hoover, Bluff Park, Vestavia, Pelham, that kind of thing. And I'd pick streets and I'd call those streets until I had an appointment.
So no way to whittle down like who was selling, who was buying, who was looking to move, nothing like that.
Yeah.
Just cold calls.
You had no clue.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't have systems back then that could tell us, they've been in their house for 7 years and they're likely to sell. So I didn't know.
Yeah, we've got to do that now, and kind
That was
of
my
going
next
back
question,
to like,
yeah.
all right, what if I was brand new, kind of having the knowledge I've got now, but going in with not a ton of money to invest into something. There are, through the MLS and through a couple not super expensive platforms, you can go in and find lists of people who have been in their house for a certain amount of time, who have X amount left on their mortgage in relation to the value of the home, so how much equity they have. And you can get pretty strategic on who you call or whose door you knock on, and probably eliminate or
Narrow it
maybe,
down a little
maybe
bit,
make it a
yeah.
little bit more efficient of a thing. One of the thing, and one thing that I never really did a ton. I did some, but you said you did, I think, every weekend or every Saturday for over a year, is just go and knock on every single door in the neighborhood. Here's who I am. Here's what I do. Here's my card, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, and that's like, it's free. It takes a ton of time, but it's just getting your name out there and being consistent. And I mean, I would imagine, like, if there was one neighborhood, let's say there's 500 homes, and I went and did 50 homes a weekend and just did that every single weekend for 2 years. It's like, I'm going to get some business.
Sure.
I don't know how much. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm going to get some business.
I host a barbecue at my house every Saturday. You're invited.
Yeah, come by.
Make that initial
If it
investment.
would work, I would have done it.
Yeah.
But still, you still got to get out and you got to make phone calls and you got to knock on the doors. And I think for me, it was kind of one of those things where, Michelle Kramer, who was the top agent that came to our office, talked about, she kind of specialized. And my area was I kind of Bluff Park and Green Valley and parts of Vestavia that, basically where I grew up in. And those are the areas that I for sure went and knocked on the doors, and I would hand out flyers and that kind of thing. And it was just more of a consistency and getting the public and in those areas, getting them used to seeing me and getting them used to seeing my name. A lot of times when people get ready to sell, they don't necessarily know why they remember you, but the key is that they remember. And that's kind of where I was. When you don't have any, when you don't have any buyers, you don't have any sellers, and you're in the real estate business, and it's Saturday, you need to be doing something that's productive. And I don't know if that was the most productive thing I could have been doing with my time, but it was,
Sure.
And that's kind of what I try to tell the younger agents getting in the business. What are you doing today could be productive for your real estate business. I mean, are you previewing houses? Are you learning the inventory? Are you taking somebody for coffee? Or are you, making phone calls? You just said it. Nowadays you can kind of pinpoint and get a really good list of people that are more likely to sell than others. Why aren't you calling these people? Why aren't you at least showing up at their house?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
Can I help you some way? That's just part of the business that people, have forgotten.
Yeah.
Why are you not getting in front of these people? That I think that goes back to, everybody wants the easy, here's the system, the system has all these leads come straight to you. Well, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
You've got to pick up the phone and you've got to go to them.
Yeah.
That's the difference. You can't be passive and wait for things to come to you. You've got to go the leads yourself, go after them. Even if given leads from the internet or something from Zillow, you still have to make the phone.
Yeah.
And it's not one phone call. Sometimes you have to make 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5 phone calls to the same person.
Yep.
It's not, oh, they said they didn't want to sell. Well, they talk to you. Maybe they want to sell tomorrow. Maybe they want to sell next year. Keep calling. Keep being in front of them.
Well, and that, so you see a common theme of consistency is necessary here, and it's crazy. I mean, it's something I struggle with all the time because shiny objects, and I get distracted and maybe have ADD, I don't know. But that consistency, it applies to everything. And so, Rachel's a physical therapist, my wife, and I got into running a couple years ago. I've had some knee issues, whatever. I finally pinpointed the issue. I didn't. She did, and found what the issue was and gave me exercises. And I did them for like 2 days, and I went and ran, and it still hurt. I'm like, what the heck? Like, this isn't working.
Done with this.
And she's like, no,
2
you got to
whole
do
days.
it for a month, twice a day. And it's like, oh, it's consistency, right? And so it's like, this is not like a new concept or only independent to real estate. Like, it's just that consistency and picking. So I kind of spoke like all the shiny objects and new systems out there are bad. They're really not. What's bad is not being consistent in a single one for a long period of time. So you can probably pick majority of any of those systems that come out and do it and succeed in it. But the problem is if you do one for 6 weeks, another one for 2 months, you're just never building that momentum. And so you really got to get going. So that's something that when I kind of shifted my business 3-4 years ago and tried to focus on growth, it was picking just a couple activities. And it was, making at least 10 phone calls a day and 1 social media post a day and just being consistent in those things, period. Which were both free things for me to do. So it was easy to stomach that quote unquote cost of time, but it was just being consistent. And that's what changed my business.
I wonder how much of it is like this is my own brain talking, but how much of it is like a cultural thing, especially at the height of the pandemic, people became very, not agoraphobic, but just like very stuck in their own private ways. And examples of that are people DoorDash their food now. People. I've got friends that if I call them, they will not answer. If I text them, they will fire right back. It's almost like a social anxiety type deal of just like that face-to-face interaction. And I'm curious, people just getting out of college or high school or getting into this industry, how much that affects. It's like, well, I don't want to call people. I want to email everybody, or I want to, message everybody through this app or something. I don't necessarily want to go. I'm definitely not going to go knock on doors. Who the heck does that? Like, that's crazy.
Well, to an extent, and I think an agent, part of our job is to be somewhat of a chameleon and be able to communicate to your target market or your client the way they like to communicate. And so there very much is a discrepancy of how I communicate to someone my grandparents' age versus a first-time home buyer who's 22 years old. Like you
can reach me on TikTok.
Right.
If you knock on my apartment, I will not answer the door.
Direct message me through TikTok only. That's the only
That's the only way. Do not call me.
But there's a lot of truth to that. And so you'll see, agents who come in and just say, and I've been guilty of this, of like, it's easier for me to fire off a text real quick. And so like I may do that to a client who, hey, I'm pretty much phone call only and I don't get an answer. And I'm like, oh, oops, I got to go back and call them real quick because it's just really converting and making our business apply to and give the best service.
If you could be an effective communicator, then
yeah, right.
It doesn't seem it's easy.
Effective and consistent.
Yeah,
effective and consistent.
That's the key.
See a thing.
Yeah, and I have agents come to me and say, hey, I'm going to send a postcard out to 1,000 people in Russet Wood. I'm like, well, hold on, why don't we send 100 postcards 10 times?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be 10 times more effective than that one postcard you're going to send. Because I've seen people do it. They'll send 1,000 postcards out, and then 3 weeks later they say, "Well, I didn't get anything out of that, so it doesn't work." Hey, let's pinpoint, specialize a little bit more. Let's pick 4 streets, and let's send a postcard every month for a year, and you'll have a better opportunity to be successful.
Yeah, that's so good. Because I was that person. And it's expensive to send out 1,000 postcards. Yeah. I mean, it's thousands of dollars.
Sure.
And I've been that person of like, okay, I did it once. I'm out of money, so I can't do it 10 more times.
Yeah.
And I got nothing from it, so I just wasted a bunch of
Or
money.
if something else is successful, then you focus all your energy there. or
Yeah, yeah.
something.
Oh, that didn't work. All right, what's next?
Yeah.
Right, and it's so yeah. The rifle approach versus the shotgun approach is so much more effective.
Yeah, and you said something, since the pandemic. Since the pandemic, we've really seen studies that have said the personal phone call, a personal note, postcards, people are opening their mail again.
Yeah.
For the longest time, snail mail was no good, because people were getting so much. Now, people want that. Through the pandemic, when they were stuck at home, a card in the mail, that was a big deal.
Got the stack of junk mail. I'm actually going to go through it.
Yeah,
and
I don't
read
have
it.
anything else to do. So, it still goes back to the basic things. Done consistently will be successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about. So you kind of heard his origin story, but when I got into the business, Thad was one of the first people I met, and so I joined a brokerage that ARC maybe not even existed at the time. It was just.
How long
getting
has
started.
ARC been around?
About 12 years.
Have
12
we talked?
years.
I don't know if we talked about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So it's got a long history. Said Tommy Brigham started it, who started Brigham Williams in the early '80s. Became Realty South, which is a pretty a big name in town, and then sold that in 2005 to a national group, I guess, and then he started ARC 13 maybe.
Cool. Little history lesson there.
Yeah. So that's and when Tommy started, he brought a lot of like the very, very well-known agents and top producers in town. So there's a long history and a long a lot of knowledge in that ARC foundation, even though it's kind of a newer company. It's kind of a cool story. But so I guess it was getting started about right when I got in the business. Well, like we've talked about, I didn't know what a realtor was. I just picked the office that was literally closest to my parents' house where I was living because I just needed to put my license somewhere. Still not knowing what a realtor was. Somehow I got a transaction. It was I remember it was a $95,000 lot on Shades Crest Road, and it was a friend's sister. And the closing was coming up. I think you helped me through like what paperwork was and how to get to a close. Again, knew nothing. And the closing day was coming up, and I was sitting in the office. I was so excited, super nervous, had no idea what was about to go down. And I was like,
I've never done this.
yeah, I was like, Dad, I've got my first closing. And he's, top producer. Like, he's running 90-0. He's got all kinds of stuff to do. And helping me benefits him in no way at all.
Yeah.
But I was like, will you come to closing with me? Like, what if they ask me something that I have no idea what the answer is? And he was like, boom, let's go. Like, no thought about it. The question, and so, like, that kind of just mentorship and leadership just spoke volumes to me. Because when we got to closing, we just sat there and did literally nothing. And then that's what you're supposed to do as an agent at closing. And if you do something as an agent at closing, that means something's wrong.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
So you want to be kind of just
Got all my
you're just there.
ducks in a row.
You're really the calming force.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. You're like if you do something in closing as an agent, something's wrong. And so it would have been super easy for him to say, literally show up. All your ducks are in a row. I made sure, like, just go. You're good. Call me if you need anything. That would have been like a super easy answer. But instead, he was like, boom, let's go. No problem. Like, didn't hesitate. And that just spoke volumes to me. And so when he not only joined ARC, but became the broker of the Hoover office, it was like, man, that's a no-brainer. That's a perfect leader, great mentor. Like the way he just modeled his business and like has mentored and is now basically the mentor slash boss slash counselor for our office.
Therapist,
He's just
yeah.
a good.
I'm definitely not the
position.
boss. Y'all run the show. So.
Yeah, but I don't know, just like awesome guy, and the way he's done his business and mentors everyone at ARC and me is just awesome. So I don't know if I've ever told you, thank you for all you do.
Yeah, it's one of those things where most of the time I really don't think I go to work. I love what I do. I mean, that's why I'm there early every morning. And just really, I love the sales part of it, but I even love the broker part of it even because I love seeing people be successful. One of the greatest things in the world is to see an agent come from the bottom, get started, and slowly see that momentum start to take hold and start seeing that success. That kind of thing to me is just, it's as good as, winning a contract or getting a good listing that is going to sell quickly and doing a good job for them, but doing a good job for y'all and helping y'all be the best you can be there's really, to me, there's nothing.
Yeah.
So.
One of the cool things about ARC and why I joined it. So fast forward, I was at that brokerage for 3 months, and then I got introduced to Bo Beavis, who is was the main broker and is now was the owner of ARC. one of the owners of ARC. Met him and met with Tommy and saw that, any brokerage to an extent will just, we want you as an agent, come in, you'll pay us our office fees and maybe you'll sell some stuff and make us some money. So it's, as an agent, you can pretty much go anywhere you want. But Tommy was pretty specific on the type of culture and type of agent that he wanted. He was being more selective or selective at all on who he let in. And
He didn't just want an army of drones.
Right, yeah. And so, and that's reflected in the culture and character of ARC and each agent there, but also the numbers. So if you look at, okay, well, even if you're a top producer, and this is something that Thad's done and done pretty well with our office, exceptionally well, is being pretty selective on who he lets in as an agent. And I think there are people that produce a lot of volume that probably just weren't a great fit for our office, and Thad's done a good job of just kind of letting them know, hey, thank you, but no thank you, because we're trying to, we're a family, a 60-strong family and anyone's there to help anybody else, and there's no, I was going to say there's no competition. I'm very competitive, so there is some there's a lot of competition.
I think there's a difference between competition and like maybe ego. Or something like that.
And there's
no prima donnas.
Yes,
I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Absolutely.
I think there is a ton of competition, and I love that. You want competitive people because it does make it fun.
Yeah.
But there's nobody there that puts themselves above everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. There's a place for every realtor, and every office has its own little culture, ecosystem that, and some people just don't fit, their mentality doesn't fit. Maybe their goals don't fit for what we're trying to accomplish. Nobody's, really don't have a lot of bad people in our industry, but we have some that do their business a different way that won't fit where we do it.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of, I think we've kind of got our own little thing, our own ecosystem that kind of works well.
Yeah, and one of the things Tommy told me when we met 12-ish years ago was, I forget what verse it is, but it's do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider the other person greater than yourself. And it was hearing that.
Is that the mission statement on the wall?
Yeah,
I mean,
it kind of is.
It kind of is,
It
yeah.
really is.
And it's one thing for someone to just say that to you in an interview to, try to say this is who we are.
Yeah.
But to watch that be actually lived out through
walk the walk.
Yeah, I mean, it truly is, and that's that's why I have it memorized, is because like I heard that then I'm like, that's cool, but is it real? And it is, and that's truly how every agent operates, and it's kind of like his interviewing process, but it's probably something along the lines of, do you walk that walk of that verse? And if you don't, this just probably isn't a good fit for you. And that's the office kind of atmosphere and culture he's created. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, it's cool to get a little insight into what you guys do. And I've heard Blake say it a million times, and I guess you really reiterated it by saying, you love what you do. And I've heard Blake, I asked Blake, if you had $10 million, would you still sell real estate? And he's like, yeah, I think I would. I just love doing it.
He's kind of good at it, too.
So, yeah. Okay, so it was really cool hearing about what you guys do on a day-to-day, and I've heard Blake say it a million times. He loves what he does, and I've kind of heard you say that too, so it sounds like working at ARC. It's a really cool experience, and really appreciate you guys coming by and hanging out with us. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
But before we get out of here, Blake has recommended a lot of books to me that I've read about finance and investing and just really cool stuff. Is there anything that you might recommend, or any tips you might recommend for anybody who's looking to get into this business?
There's so many really good books about real estate and selling in general out there, and selling the right way. One book that I've always loved is Jeffrey Gitomer, The Little Red Book of Selling.
The Little Red Book of Selling.
Yeah,
okay.
It's an easy book to read, but it kind of gives you a really good mindset of what we talked about, making the phone calls, doing the things you need to do on a daily basis to be successful. It's one of many good books that I would recommend, especially to somebody that's new to the.
Is it real estate specific, or is it more general, like just sales in general?
It's more general sales.
Okay.
So I think it can apply to, easily apply to real estate, mortgage, that kind of thing, anything close to this kind of industry. But it's a really sales in general book.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Blake, good to see you again.
Good to be here. Glad
Nice
we
to
did
meet you,
this.
Thad, and until next time.
Till
Sounds
next
good.
time.